Soft Norse stories, the entire story of Loki's mischief. No one ever noticed the moment Asgard began to rot. There was no thunder, no scream, no prophecy carved into stone. It began quietly, with a smile. A thin, knowing smile that belonged to only one being in all the 9 realms. Loki. If you had stood in Asgard that night, you would have sworn everything was peaceful. The golden halls glowed as they always had. The gods laughed, drank, and boasted of old victories. Odin sat upon his high seat, silent and watchful, his single eye scanning futures no one else could see. Thor's laughter echoed like distant storms. Everything looked eternal. Everything looked unbreakable. And that was the lie. Because Loki was already planning. Loki was never the strongest god. He did not command thunder, nor rule the dead, nor see all paths of fate. His power was far more dangerous. Loki understood weakness. He understood desire. And most of all, he understood that even gods had fears they never spoke aloud. He stood near the edge of Asgard, where the golden stone met endless sky, his cloak fluttering softly in a wind that felt wrong. His face carried that familiar expression, half amusement, half calculation. To the gods, Loki was a trickster, a necessary annoyance, a clever tongue that made feasts livelier and journeys less dull. But beneath their laughter, something else lived. Distrust, unease, a feeling they refused to name. Odin felt it first. The Allfather's fingers tightened around the arm of his throne. His ravens had returned restless, their black wings beating warnings into the air. The threads of fate trembled, subtle but undeniable. Loki had not yet acted, but Odin knew the most dangerous storms were the ones that waited. Loki had been welcomed into Asgard long ago, bound to Odin by oath, raised among gods who would never truly see him as one of their own. He was born of giants, enemies of the gods, and no matter how often he saved them, that truth clung to him like a shadow. Every feast, every victory, every shared laugh carried an unspoken reminder, "You are not us." And Loki remembered every single one. He remembered the sideways glances when victories were celebrated. He remembered how praise turned quickly into suspicion. He remembered how his cleverness was admired only when it served others, and feared the moment it did not. Loki learned early that Asgard loved his usefulness, not his loyalty. That night, he walked the halls of Asgard slowly, listening. Gods spoke freely when they thought themselves safe. They spoke of glory, of destiny, of how eternal they believed themselves to be. Loki smiled wider with every word. Eternity bored him. Certainty offended him. He stopped near a pair of guards, their armor gleaming, their grip tight on their spears. They stiffened at his presence, unsure whether to bow or watch him. Loki leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to plant doubt, just enough to disturb. A single sentence. A single suggestion. He moved on before they could respond. That was how Loki worked. He did not smash walls. He loosened stones. In the days that followed, small things began to change. Words were misunderstood. Tempers flared faster than usual. Trust frayed. Thor found himself angered by insults he could not remember hearing. Frey felt unease he could not explain. Even Odin, for all his wisdom, felt something slipping beyond his grasp. And Loki watched. He watched gods argue over nothing. He watched pride turn sharp. He watched certainty crack. And deep inside, something burned, not rage, not cruelty, but a hunger to prove a single truth. That the gods were not perfect. That order was fragile. That chaos did not need permission. Long before the first great betrayal, before blood stained Asgard stones, Loki tested his reach. He whispered half-truths. He twisted harmless events into imagined threats. He learned exactly how far he could push without being noticed. Every successful manipulation fed his confidence. Every unnoticed lie convinced him that the gods deserved what was coming. Yet even Loki did not fully understand the path he had stepped onto. Because mischief, once unleashed, does not remain small. There was a moment, brief and almost invisible, when Loki hesitated. Standing alone beneath the starlit sky, he felt the weight of fate press against him. He wondered, for the first time, what would happen if he went too far. If the game stopped being a game. If Asgard broke beyond repair. The thought passed quickly. Loki had never been allowed the comfort of belonging. If the gods would never trust him, then he would become the one they could never ignore. Fear, after all, was a kind of respect. Odin summoned Loki soon after. The great hall fell silent as the trickster entered. Every eye followed him. Loki bowed deeply, mockingly respectful, his expression calm and unreadable. Odin studied him for a long time, searching for cracks, for guilt, for truth. He found none. Loki's mind was a maze even the Allfathers struggled to navigate. "You walk strange paths," Odin said at last. Loki smiled softly. "All paths lead somewhere." Odin did not smile back. When Loki left the hall, he knew something important had changed. The gods were watching him more closely now. The game would have to escalate. Subtlety alone would no longer satisfy what had begun stirring inside him. That was when Loki's thoughts turned toward something far more dangerous than whispers and misunderstandings. A single event. One moment. One irreversible act. Something that would force the gods to face the truth about themselves and about him. Far beyond Asgard, in realms the gods rarely visited, ancient forces waited. Prophecies slept beneath stone and ice. Creatures long forgotten stirred restlessly, as if sensing that a boundary had been crossed. Loki did not yet know their names. He did not yet understand their roles. But fate had noticed him, and fate never forgets. As Loki stood once more at Asgard's edge, gazing into the endless dark, he whispered a promise meant only for himself. "I will show them." The wind carried his words away, down through realms and time, toward a future soaked in fire, betrayal, and loss. A future where mischief would become something far worse. And Asgard, still laughing, still blind, stood directly in its path. The first real fracture in Asgard did not come from fire or war. It came from laughter. Loki's laughter echoed through the great halls as the gods gathered for celebration, unaware that the night would end differently than it began. The feast was meant to honor unity, to remind the gods of their shared victories and unbreakable bonds. Loki understood the irony perfectly. Unity was easiest to shatter when everyone believed it already existed. He moved among them like a shadow with a smile, his words light, his tone playful. He praised Thor's strength, teased Frey's pride, admired Odin's wisdom. Each compliment carried a hidden edge, a subtle twist designed to bruise egos rather than soothe them. No one noticed at first. Why would they? Loki had always spoken this way. That was his greatest shield, familiarity. Thor drank deeply, his laughter loud and careless. Loki leaned close and casually mentioned how warriors in distant realms questioned whether thunder alone truly made Thor great. The words were spoken softly, almost as a joke. Thor laughed, but the laughter lingered too long, strained and forced. A seed had been planted. Nearby, Frey overheard Loki praising another god's prosperity, carefully implying that Frey's blessings had grown weaker with time. Frey said nothing, but his smile faded. Gods did not doubt themselves easily, but when they did, the doubt cut deep. Odin observed everything in silence. His ravens circled restlessly above the hall, sensing imbalance. Odin felt the tension rising like pressure beneath stone. He saw Loki's lips move, saw reactions ripple outward, but the cause remained frustratingly unclear. Loki was careful, always careful. As the feast ended, Asgard felt different. Quieter, heavier. The gods dispersed with unease clinging to them like smoke. Loki remained behind for a moment, alone in the hall, listening to the echoes fade. He felt satisfaction, not joy, but confirmation. He could move them. He could bend them. Even gods were not immune. That night, Loki dreamed of fire. Not the wild, destructive blaze of Muspelheim, but a slow-burning flame that crept unseen beneath structures until collapse became inevitable. When he awoke, he understood something new about himself. Mischief was no longer enough. He wanted consequence. His thoughts turned toward the one figure in Asgard who represented everything Loki could never be: purity, beauty, and unquestioned love. Baldur. Baldur, beloved by all, shone like daylight among the gods. No whisper followed him. No suspicion clung to his name. Even Loki, in moments of honesty, felt a strange bitterness when Baldur entered a room, and smiles followed naturally. Baldur was everything Loki was not allowed to be, and that made him dangerous. Baldur had begun dreaming of his own death. Night after night, visions haunted him: darkness, silence, and pain. Frightened, his mother Frigg traveled the 9 realms, demanding oaths from every object, creature, and force, swearing they would never harm her son. Stones, metals, beasts, sickness, fire, all obeyed her will. All except one. Loki learned of this omission by accident, or so it seemed. He listened carefully as God spoke of Baldur's invincibility with relief and pride. They laughed as weapons bounced harmlessly from Baldur's body, turning fear into sport. Loki laughed with them, though his mind worked relentlessly. Invincibility invited testing. Testing invited failure. Disguising himself as an old woman, Loki approached Frigg, feigning harmless curiosity. His voice trembled, his posture bent, his questions innocent. Frigg, trusting and relieved by her success, spoke freely. She mentioned mistletoe, young, fragile, overlooked, too weak to demand an oath. That was all Loki needed. The mistletoe was small, insignificant, easily ignored. Loki shaped it carefully, forming a dart so delicate it barely felt real in his hand. He did not feel guilt. Not yet. He told himself this was still a game, still mischief. The gods laughed at danger. He would remind them it existed. When the gods gathered again, they continued their sport, throwing weapons at Baldur, marveling as nothing harmed him. Loki watched patiently, waiting for the right moment. He approached Hr, Baldur's blind brother, standing apart from the others, excluded from the game. Loki spoke kindly, guiding Hr's hand, placing the mistletoe dart within it. He offered to help him join the fun, to feel included. Hr trusted him. Why wouldn't he? The dart flew. The laughter died instantly. Baldur fell. Silence swallowed Asgard whole. Gods froze, unable to comprehend what they had seen. Blood stained the ground beneath Baldur's unmoving body. Frigg's scream tore through the realms, raw and endless. Hr collapsed in horror, his hands trembling, his heart shattering. And Loki stood still. For the first time, the consequences were undeniable. This was no rumor, no whispered doubt. This was death. The gods' immortality had cracked, and through that crack poured grief, rage, and terror. Odin understood immediately. Fate had shifted. A line had been crossed that could never be erased. Loki fled before the accusations could form, before hands could reach for him. He ran not from guilt, but from realization. The game was over. Mischief had become something darker, heavier, unstoppable. Behind him, Asgard mourned. Ahead of him, fate prepared its answer. And somewhere deep in the roots of the world, ancient forces stirred, awakened by blood spilled not in war, but betrayal. The death of Baldur was not the end. It was the beginning. Loki did not run far before the weight of what he had done began to follow him. The realms felt different now, colder, sharper, as if the universe itself had turned its face away. Wherever he went, shadows seemed to stretch longer, and the air carried whispers of Baldur's name. For the first time, Loki understood that there were acts even cleverness could not undo. In Asgard, grief hardened into fury. Frigg's sorrow was endless, her tears soaking the earth, her cries echoing through every hall. Odin stood silent, his face carved from stone, knowing the cost of what had been set in motion. The gods no longer argued or doubted. They were united now, not by pride or victory, but by loss. Hr was seized first. Though blind and manipulated, justice among gods demanded balance. Odin's judgment was swift and merciless. Hr's life was taken, another sacrifice laid at the altar of fate. The blood spilled did nothing to ease the pain. It only deepened the wound. Loki watched from afar as punishment fell upon others, and the knowledge burned inside him. He had not meant for this. Or perhaps he had, and only now feared the scale of his success. The line between intention and consequence blurred until it no longer mattered. Baldur was gone. Asgard would never be the same. The gods hunted Loki relentlessly. No disguise could hide him for long. His magic faltered under the weight of destiny pressing against him. When they finally captured him, there was no ceremony, no negotiation. Only cold resolve. They dragged him to a cavern deep beneath the earth, far from light and mercy. There, they bound him with chains forged from his own son's entrails, a cruelty meant to mirror the suffering he had caused. Loki screamed then, not in pain alone, but in disbelief. The gods he had once dined with did not hesitate. Their faces held no humor now, only judgment. Above Loki's bound body, they placed a serpent, its jaws dripping venom. Drop by drop, the poison fell onto his face, burning like fire. Loki's wife, Sigyn, knelt beside him, holding a bowl to catch the venom. Her hands trembled, but she did not leave. When the bowl filled and she turned to empty it, the venom struck Loki's skin, and his screams shook the earth itself. The ground trembled with every cry. Mountains cracked. Storms raged. Mortals would later call these earthquakes, never knowing they were born from a god's suffering. Time lost meaning in the darkness. Loki's laughter died there, replaced by something colder. Each drop of venom carved resentment deeper into his soul. The gods believed they had contained chaos, but they misunderstood its nature. Chaos did not vanish when bound. It waited. In his torment, Loki began to see visions. He saw the future unravel in flashes of fire and blood. He saw gods fall, skies burn, and the world drown in ash. At the center of it all stood himself, no longer a trickster, but a symbol of ruin. Ragnarok whispered his name like a promise. Sigyn remained by his side through it all. Her loyalty was the last fragile thread connecting Loki to what he had once been. But even that thread thinned with time. Pain reshapes truth. Suffering rewrites purpose. Far above, the gods tried to restore order. They told themselves Baldur's death had been avenged, that Loki's punishment had ended the threat. But peace built on denial is always temporary. Odin, in his quiet moments, felt the truth gnaw at him. Fate had not been stopped, only delayed. As ages passed, Loki's children grew in the shadows. The wolf Fenrir strained against his bonds, his hunger and hatred growing with every moment. Jormungandr, the world serpent, coiled around the oceans, tightening his grip on the earth. Hel ruled the realm of the dead, her domain swelling with souls. Each of them carried Loki's blood and his destiny. Bound, broken, and burning with vengeance, Loki waited. He waited for the moment the chains would fail. He waited for the bowl to slip. He waited for the world to finally crack. And deep within the roots of existence, the prophecy stirred. Ragnarok was no longer a distant warning. It was inevitable. Time did not heal the world. It only sharpened its edges. Seasons passed, then centuries, and still Loki remained bound beneath the earth, his body broken but his will unextinguished. Each tremor of pain, each drop of venom, carved patience into him. He no longer dreamed of clever tricks or whispered lies. He dreamed of endings. Above him, the world decayed quietly. Trust among the gods never fully returned. Laughter sounded hollow in Asgard's halls. Victory tasted dull. Baldur's absence was a wound that never closed, a constant reminder that immortality had limits. Odin felt it most strongly. His visions grew darker, filled with fire, shattered halls, and gods lying lifeless upon broken stone. The signs began subtly. Winters stretched longer than they should have. Crops failed. The sun seemed weaker, as if afraid to shine fully upon the world. Mortals suffered first, unaware they were paying the price for divine crimes. Fimbulwinter crept across the realms, relentless and merciless, burying hope beneath endless snow. Loki felt the change before anyone else. The venom still burned, but now something else burned with it: anticipation. The chains that held him trembled, responding to the same forces unraveling the world. Fate was tightening its grip, pulling every piece into place. Sigyn's hands shook more often now. Exhaustion carved lines into her face, and there were moments when the bowl slipped just enough for venom to strike Loki's skin. Each drop brought pain, but also a strange clarity. Loki welcomed it. Pain had become proof that he still existed, that he still mattered. Far away, Fenrir's bonds weakened. The wolf had grown too large, too powerful, his hatred feeding his strength. The gods sensed the danger but hesitated. Fear slowed them. Doubt paralyzed them. When Fenrir finally broke free, his howl split the sky, and the sound carried to Loki's prison like a signal. Jormungandr stirred in the oceans, his massive body shifting, causing waves to crash against shores with unnatural fury. The sea rose, swallowing lands and lives without warning. Sailors spoke of a serpent beneath the water, its eyes glowing with ancient malice. The world serpent's movement was not random. It was a response. Hell opened the gates of her realm wider. The dead gathered, restless and cold, their numbers swelling beyond control. Death no longer felt like an ending, but a preparation. The final trigger came quietly. A single moment of weakness. Seijen turned to empty the bowl, her hands numb, her strength nearly gone. The venom fell freely, striking Loki full in the face. His scream shook the foundations of the world harder than ever before. The chains snapped. Stone shattered. Darkness exploded outward. Loki rose, free at last, his body scarred, his eyes burning with purpose. The centuries of suffering did not break him. They forged him. He did not return to Asgard as a trickster. He returned as a force. Loki gathered his children, his allies, and the forgotten monsters of the realms. Giants marched. The dead followed. Fire giants from Muspelheim advanced beneath burning skies. The Bifrost groaned under the weight of what approached. In Asgard, the gods knew. Heimdall raised the horn, Gyllerhorn, and its blast echoed across existence. The sound carried dread, certainty, and finality. Ragnarok had begun. Odin prepared for war, knowing victory was impossible, but resistance was necessary. Thor gripped Mjolnir, his face hardened, aware that even his strength had limits. Gods and monsters moved toward each other, fate guiding every step. And at the center of it all walked Loki. No longer smiling. No longer laughing. Only certain. He had once wanted attention. He had once wanted respect. Now, he wanted truth. And the truth was this: the world could not survive its own gods. The battlefield formed beneath a sky split by fire and ash. Every prophecy converged on this moment. Every choice led here. The end had arrived. The sky broke before the first blow was struck. Fire spilled across the heavens, ash falling like black snow as the armies of fate collided. Ragnarok was not a sudden explosion of chaos, but a slow, horrifying unraveling of everything the gods had built. The ground cracked beneath marching feet, and the air screamed with the sound of inevitability. Odin rode at the front of the gods, his spear raised, his ravens circling wildly above him. He knew how this would end. He had always known. Knowledge did not grant mercy, only clarity. Across the battlefield, Loki advanced with the forces of destruction at his back. There was no triumph in his expression, only a calm acceptance of what he had become. Thor met Jormungandr amid crashing waves and shattered earth. Thunder roared as Mjolnir struck the serpent again and again, each blow echoing across the realms. At last, the world serpent fell, its massive body collapsing into the sea. Thor stood victorious for only a moment before venom filled the air. He took 9 steps and collapsed, the thunder god falling silent beneath a burning sky. Fenrir found Odin. The wolf lunged with jaws wide enough to swallow the world. Odin fought with all the strength and wisdom of ages, but prophecy does not bend. Fenrir consumed the All-Father, ending the rule of Asgard in a single, brutal act. The gods felt the loss ripple through them like a wound to the soul. Vidar avenged his father, tearing Fenrir apart, but the victory rang hollow. One death could not undo another. The battlefield grew quieter as gods fell one by one, their names turning into echoes rather than legacies. Loki and Heimdall found each other in the chaos. Guardian and betrayer. Watcher and deceiver. Their fight was swift and merciless, driven by centuries of resentment. Neither sought escape. Neither asked forgiveness. When the final blows landed, both fell together, lifeless, bound by hatred even in death. Fire consumed Asgard. The golden halls collapsed, melting into ruin. The Bifrost shattered, its colors fading into smoke. The 9 realms burned, drowned, and broke as the world returned to silence. And then, slowly, the fire died. From the ashes, something new stirred. The seas receded. The sky cleared. A green earth emerged, untouched by memory. Surviving gods returned quietly, changed and diminished. Baldur rose from the realm of the dead, his presence gentle and forgiving, a symbol of what the world might become. There were no songs for Loki. His name became a warning, a lesson whispered rather than celebrated. Some remembered him as a villain, others as a victim of fate. The truth lived somewhere between. Loki had not destroyed the world alone. He had only revealed its fractures and pushed them to their conclusion. The new world did not forget chaos, but it learned from it. Stories replaced certainty. Balance replaced pride. And in the silence that followed the end of gods, one truth remained. Mischief can change the world. Suffering can shape destiny. And even the smallest lie can bring about the end of everything. The story of Loki did not end with laughter. It ended with truth.